you are an alcoholic or you're not, but really it's a spectrum. And it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum. It's okay to be in a gray area and decide to stop drinking.
In 2020, you made a life-changing decision to quit.
I choose not to drink because I can drink alcohol if I want, but I choose not to drink because of the various things that it's done for me in my life or not served me. Stop trying to quit it, quit. Just get curious and you make the decision that's best for your life. What do I do? Everyone's drinking and I, 2 drinks in and I'm like, well, this isn't good conversation anymore. And I would find myself going back to my room and I felt like, what's the point of being here if our whole focus in the evening is around standing around drinking alcohol? Community is huge. Many of us keep these, and it doesn't have to be addiction. It doesn't have to be alcohol. But there's a lot of stuff we deal with in life that we keep it hidden, where we think we're the only ones who are dealing with this.
Welcome to Rosabel Unscripted, the podcast where authenticity meets real life stories. I'm your host, Rosabel Zohfeld, and in each episode, I dive into unscripted conversations about personal growth, life challenges, and the experiences that shaped us. From heart-to-heart chats with inspiring guests to raw moments of self-discovery, I am here to share stories that connect us all. Whether you're seeking motivation, healing, or simply a dose of real talk, you are in the right place. So get comfortable, tune in, and join me on this journey of transformation, empowerment, and meaningful conversations. This is Rosabel Unscripted. Hello and welcome. Today, I'm honored to have Laura Nelson. Welcome, Laura. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
You were in the dental industry, right? Correct?
That's my day job, I'm in the dental industry. Yeah. I have 2 jobs, 2 passions.
Yes, I hear you on that one. But you are also the founder of Sobriety Rocks. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders.
You're also the author of the Inclusive Event Planner.
Yep, exactly.
Well, once again, thank you for being here. So why don't we start at the beginning? So, Laura, you spent decades attending professional events in the dental world, conferences, galas, after parties, where, of course, there was alcohol everywhere, correct? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So like I said, my day job is the dental industry. I started a business 20 years ago. I'm a speaker in the industry. So I do a lot of conferences like many people. We have, work events and conferences and things that we have to go to. And I've been doing that, raising 2 children, the traditional regular business life. But over the last 10-ish years, as I get older and as I travel more and as my business grows, I found that I was going to more events and drinking more and starting earlier happy hours and staying up later and more networking events and kind of just starting to get tired of it, but not stopping because that was just what was expected, right? That's just, and every time I talk about this, I hear people say, well, in our industry, it's worse than my industry or your industry. So I know it's not just a dental thing, right? So that's really kind of how the trajectory started of me assessing my relationship with alcohol. And I don't want to jump too far forward if you've got questions in there, but really it wasn't any sort of rock bottom thing. It was more of just the everyday life of what was expected in my career and then in my home life, right?
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my question, like how, alcohol play a role and so on. However, in 2020, you made a life-changing decision, right? To basically quit drinking. So tell us more about that clarity moment and what was going through your mind.
So like I said, I had battled with this, like so much of life had so much alcohol had to do with it, right? Where do we have dinner and where do we meet for drinks? And as a speaker, I used to have to really watch what I drank the night before so that I could get on stage and speak the next day. And that's really kind of what happened is I was at a conference and I knew I had to speak on the second day of the conference. And on the first day, the night before, I went out later and had that extra glass of wine. And the next morning, the speaker, the organizer of the conference said one of the speakers didn't show up and she wanted to know if I could go on a day early. But I hadn't planned to speak that day. And I really didn't think I could bring my best performance on stage. And that got me thinking about, this is what I do for a living, and I can't actually step up and get on stage today because I just don't feel great from the night before. And so the next morning I got up and I was at the gym trying to feel good, get ready to get on stage. And I came across a TED Talk called A Gray Area Drinker. And she talks about in the TED Talk about the fact that, we kind of think of it as an alcoholic or not. You are an alcoholic or you're not, but really it's a spectrum. And it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum. It's okay to be in a gray area and decide to stop drinking. And that message just resonated with me that morning. And that was actually the last day that I drank. I came home and decided at that point it was time for me to stop giving this substance so much attention in my life and to really get control back in my life. So that was the breaking point for me where I finally woke up one day and said, I'm done.
That's good. However, I do have a question. So what happens following that? Because did you have like a moment where how were those first weeks of sobriety?
Yeah. I came home and made the decision to stop drinking. Luckily, the very first book that I bought was called This Naked Mind. And This Naked Mind talks about how alcohol plays such a huge part in our lives. And it talks about when we were growing up and how mommy and daddy had mommy and daddy time and drinks. And so we grew up thinking it was this magic elixir that we were going to have when we get older. The billboards that we see and how you're going to be rich and sexy and famous if you drink this vodka or tequila, and sports events. And so, and then in the book, she breaks down what happens in our brains around alcohol and that it's an addictive substance. And so I was lucky enough to read that book the very first, I think I read it in the first 2 days. And it changed my perspective from I can't drink to I choose not to drink, because I can drink alcohol if I want, but I choose not to drink because of the various things that it's done for me in my life or not served me in my life. However, I didn't tell my professional world that I had stopped drinking because I didn't really want to put that out there, and I kept that private. So what I did is I went over to TikTok and started a TikTok channel where I just talked about the first day, the first week, the first month, and I did it for others because I know that there's others who will have to go through what I was going through. But I also did it for me because I wanted to be able to look back later and say, I don't want to go through day one again. I don't want to go through week one again, because not only is it hard to stop drinking because of the societal pressures, but it is an addictive substance, right? We have been using it for various reasons, to celebrate, to numb the pain, to do the things. So it wasn't necessarily easy, I would say, but I was lucky and everybody has their own journey and path, but I was lucky on my path that was the thing I needed, was to really retrain my subconscious around how I felt about alcohol and how it was serving me in my life.
And that's how you decided to form or to co-found Life Rocks, right?
Sober Life Rocks. Yeah, that was actually a few years later.
Rock.
Yeah, that was a few years later, because I stopped drinking in January 2020. And then, as you know, the world shut down in March. So then I was home and not traveling for a couple of years. And then when I got back on the road to conferences, now I'm going to conferences in a very different view because I don't drink. And most of the conferences, as soon as I was done speaking, we go to happy hour, or they go to the conference room, we roll up the bar and everybody stands around and drinks. And I'm kind of like, well, what do I do? Everyone's drinking. And I, 2 drinks in, and I'm like, well, this isn't good conversation anymore. And I would find myself going back to my room. And I felt like, what's the point of being here if our whole focus in the evening is around standing around drinking alcohol? And so with my business partner, we formed Sober Life Rocks in 2023 to help support professionals, because we feel like there's a lot of people who are sober in silence or suffering in silence. And we're at these events where drinking is the main focus of what we do. And we feel very alone. And so what we wanted to do is connect others to not feel alone, right?
Yes. And thank you for sharing that. And that just brought something to my mind that happened a few years ago. And it was a little bit of comical. I'm a nurse practitioner, by the way. And so there was an invitation, and I think it was something the Liver Society, and they were going to talk about alcoholic liver disease or so. And then they also mentioned that there were going to be drinks after the conference. And I was just like, seriously?
Yeah.
And that's what our society does, to us,
Actually, I've been in the last year and a half, I've really noticed there's a whole thing about wellness, which is amazing, right?
Yes.
For me, when they're talking about wellness, if we're not talking about addiction, we're not talking about alcohol and drugs, what's the point of talking about wellness? Because it's fine if you go to yoga and breath work and you do all these, but then if you're going home and then pouring your sorrow into a half a bottle of wine, it's like, we have to have these discussions, but it's uncomfortable because it's just the way we've always done it. We've always just ended up at happy hour after the conference, right? Doesn't matter what the topic is. So yeah, it's just, and what we're trying to do is really why I wrote my book is to spotlight the fact that we don't need to do it the same way anymore. And I really resonated it to like vegetarians and vegans. Like there was a time when vegetarians and vegans used to have to go to a special table to go get their food at conferences.
Yes.
And now they're given their food with everyone else. You get asked, do you have any allergies? But we don't do the same thing with alcohol. And there's a larger percentage of people who are trying not to drink less. They don't drink. You don't have to be in recovery. You just could choose not to drink, but yet we're still serving the alcohol like everybody wants it. And we really need to change that.
Yes. And I don't know if this is true or not, but to me, it's a matter of things. It's a matter of making the decision not to drink. I know it's a little more complex than that. I tell you this, I made the decision. I remember making the decision not to drink at 5 years of age. And you know why? Because I had an alcoholic father. And at that age, I saw what alcohol did to him. It destroyed our family. It destroyed us. It destroyed me. His alcoholism was so bad that while he was an alcoholic, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Of course, later, when he finally quits, he was a different man. But prior to that, we lived with that. And so my father was the kind, I don't know if you ever heard about, apparently there is a gene actually that also, affects whether somebody will be an alcoholic or not. Like some people, like my father could not drink this much because he will go bizarre. I mean, he will just lose it. So I don't want nothing to do with alcohol. And it's been very, very interesting because I've been in events and areas where people have been drinking. And for me to be witness what alcohol does to it's been incredible, in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so it destroys lives.
Yeah. And I was going to say, yes. And we've had a lot of growth and learning up to this point. And yes, there are genes, of course, and there's a lot of hereditary things, but there's also the fact that putting an identification on the fact that alcohol is an addictive substance. So when you will get addicted, everybody will get addicted at some point or another. It's just kind of, the question is when, right? And there's a lot of factors to that. Your genetics, why you're drinking, how much you're drinking, what you're drinking, when you're like, there's a lot of, but we don't know when that will be, right? But I mean, I'm sorry for your story but it made a difference in your life of you choosing not to drink. And there's a lot of people like that. But I've got to imagine you grew up and have become a professional, seeing what other people are doing and making the choice not to drink. But there's a lot of people who have chosen not to drink now at whatever point in their life. And it's not that it's harder, but it's different now going to these events. And the more we can all come together and say, it's okay, don't drink. You don't feel so alone, right? So if you and I were together, I would know that you're in the room also, and that I'm not the only one not drinking, right? And that's really what we want to do, is just make it okay to put whatever you want in your cup, alcohol or not. That's your decision.
Non-alcoholic beverages and so on. Yeah. Wow. And can you also share a feedback of a success story that reminds you what is the mission of Yours Matters?
Yeah. So we have in our community within Sober Life Rocks, we have somebody she's a dentist. And not only is it hard to go against the norm of society when you don't drink alcohol, but also when your license, your business is on the line to go into recovery or it's a big thing. Right? It's just and so she's kept it very secret for a long time that she was sober, which is an amazing thing because honestly, choosing not to drink is one of the things I'm most proud of, right? Like I've made this big life decision, but she's kept it very quiet. She goes to this conference every year, and this conference was one of the first ones to step up when I wrote the book to say, you know what, we need to do better. And so they put together a 0 proof bar. So they have their normal bar, but then they had a 0 proof bar with all the fun drinks that they had at the normal bar, just the variations of them without alcohol. And 2 success things that came out of this. First of all, this conference, that bar, the not 0 proof bar, actually saw more business and made more drinks than the one with alcohol because more people were choosing not to drink because they were at a business event and they had to get up in the morning and they were excited about having options. And then this doctor actually reached out to us afterwards and said, for once I felt included because there were so many people who were hanging out over here, getting the same drinks. I didn't have to explain what was in my cup. And so that for me, it was a win for the conference planners. And then it was a win for the attendees because they were actually choosing choosing the alcohol-free options over the ones with alcohol. So it's just one example of many, many, many that I've had over the year and a half or so since we started.
That is incredible. That is a great story. And so this journey is what led you to the inclusive event planner, right?
Yeah. So what had happened was I've been talking online and podcasts and talking to meeting planners as I'm speaking. The question was, okay, what do we have to drink at the bar? What do we offer? And for me, it's not just the bar. Only 2 chapters in my book actually talk about the bar part of it, like the alcohol or non-alcohol drinks. It's about the conference in general, right? How to make it safe for people who maybe are in recovery or don't want to drink to know there are going to be options. How to offer ways for people to connect that are not just around happy hour or the bar. Like you can have meetups over coffee and over lunch. Like it doesn't have to always be at night at the bar. How to create an event in the evening that's not just focused around alcohol, right? Like give us something else we're there for. Alcohol can be part of it, but give me a thing I'm going to. Give me a way to connect, because we use alcohol a lot of times as the crutch when it's awkward and it's weird. And it's awkward and weird for anyone to walk into a room of strangers and have to walk up and start a conversation, right? So the book was my way to help event planners and meeting planners say, it's not just about the alcohol. Though, when we do look at the bar, here are some things that you need to consider to make people feel included in your conference. Part of the thing is events, the in-person events attendance is going down because we can do things online like this. We can watch conferences online or speakers online. So if I'm going to go to the event, I'm going for connection. But the meeting planners don't know what to do to increase, except for put more alcohol at it, throw more alcohol, bigger happy hours, longer happy hours. And that's not the solution. The solution is around the connection. And that's really what I'm hoping to share with the inclusive event planner.
That is great. And let me say something. One of the things that strikes me about what you're doing is the fact that, you know how often we tend to stop at the point like, okay, we identified that there's a problem, but it's not always easy to like, okay, here's the problem, there's a solution, and you are bringing that, which is a good thing, but, to implement changes, even if it's a trial, but it seems like it's doing pretty well. It's like giving you results, at least that, you expect, or even better, right?
I'm hoping. Yeah. We're really hoping. The best thing that's come out of this is that my business partner and I have met lots of people in the sober space, and there's a lot of people who are trying to get their message out there and trying to share, because we think the more we talk about it, the more people will feel less alone on their own decisions. And it's caused us or the next step for us is to host our own conference called Amplify Sober Voices. And it's for anyone who's soberish, sober curious in the sober space who wants to help amplify this, because we think the more we pull people together, the more we can help bring this to the forefront of restaurants and conferences and owners of businesses to say, there's a quarter of the people in your environment that don't want the alcohol. So let's just do better. So we're really excited about, hopefully, knock on wood, the next step, which is a really successful conference in January.
It's a lot about education too as well, to tell people that, hey, being sober or not drinking alcohol is not just about giving something up. It's actually about discovering who you are and so on, because there's so much that comes with clarity in mind, I'm sure you can tell us about that, the difference between, being under the influence and being sober. You can for sure make better decisions and so on. But I know you've mentioned this, but I do want you to tell us how, in your personal life, how does quitting drinking actually reshape your sense of identity and perhaps purpose?
Yeah, I love that. So like I said, when I first stopped drinking, I felt like I had to stop drinking. I was just at that point. And it wasn't, my issue was when I grew up, I was told, be careful, we have alcoholism in our family, like be careful. But nobody in my family didn't drink. I mean, everybody drank. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I just have to manage this. And I got really good at managing it to the point where I was like, this is exhausting. I thought the idea of being an alcoholic meant, you brown bag on the side of the street drinking. And I was a functioning business owner and an adult with kids. And so when I first stopped drinking, it was more of just like, this is exhausting. And I'm kind of one of those people, I'm all in or I'm all out, right? So I was all in when I drank, and then I was all out the day I said, I'm done. But what had happened was, and I didn't realize this, is the first step was putting the bottle down, like just learning how to do life without using alcohol for the highs and the lows and everything in between. But then it was a matter of looking at myself, because when you no longer have the substance to numb the pain or to go to in celebration, or you have to now start to like work on this, right? And what I had found was when I started drinking, not excessively, but I started in high school. So like in high school, we don't have the wisdom we have now. We don't have the growth we have now. And so I didn't actually know who was in here, right? I didn't know who was I? What made me happy? Where do I want to go with my life? And I found so much energy and direction and focus that I didn't have when I had alcohol in my life. And like I said, I choose not to drink every day because life has gotten so much better on the other side for me. And that's not saying everybody has to be sober, but for me, or alcohol free, but for me, it gave me a part back to my life that I didn't even know was taken from me.
Very good. And Laura, what advice would you give to someone right now who's like afraid to make a radical life change or trying like on the fence, see what they can do?
Yeah, for sure. Well, two things I would say. First of all is shame doesn't help at all. Give yourself grace, give yourself understanding that this isn't easy. And the second thing, it would be about just being curious. You don't have to choose to be sober. Part of the reason I didn't stop drinking earlier on was because I was so afraid of the idea of sober. Like, how am I going to have fun? Like, how do I do life? Right. So, and it held me back from being curious of what alcohol was doing or not doing in my life. So I would say, really, it's just be curious, start to think through, like, when do I drink? Why do I drink? How does alcohol serve me? How is it fitting into my life? And then secondly, not to beat yourself up, not to judge yourself, to find others, to listen to podcasts, to get connected in community, to just get curious and recognize that you may choose not to get sober. You may choose just to cut back, and that's great. You might find that you're fine with alcohol. That's great too. But if we're hiding from it and we're shameful for it, we're not going to be able to assess that relationship. And so really, I would say stop trying to quit, get curious, and you make the decision that's best for your life.
Absolutely. Laura, is there anything I have not asked you that perhaps you're like, I really need to get that out there? Really, if there was one thing that our listeners can take with them today, what would that be?
I would say that community is huge. So many of us keep these, and it doesn't have to be addiction. It doesn't have to be alcohol. But there's a lot of stuff we deal with in life that we keep it hidden, where we think we're the only ones who are dealing with this, and we don't talk to somebody else about it. And so I would say, whatever your issue is, find community, find somebody to talk to, because somebody else has gone through what you're going through, right? And for me, like, I kept a lot of this, for years quiet, when really there were other people who were struggling ahead of me. And had I actually reached out, I might have gotten, I've gotten help sooner, changed my life earlier. So really realize that people have gone through, you're not the only one going through whatever it is, and find and talk to somebody else, or find a community that understands what you're going through. And it's much better doing it knowing you're not alone.
Absolutely. Community is very, very important. That's what I'm trying to do here with my podcast, is create a community of open and safe environment for people to talk and share experiences like yours. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
So everything about me and what we're doing is on Sober Life Rocks. So Sober Life Rocks, we have just information about us. My book is on there, the Inclusive Event Planner, and it's a free download. If anybody's and you don't have to be throwing a conference. It could be a dinner for 5 people or a conference for 5,000. It doesn't matter. It's about how to make your event, whatever it is, more inclusive. So there's a free download, or you can order it from Amazon. And then our conference is in January, and it's Amplify Sober Voices. It's a one-day conference in Orlando. So if anyone's interested in learning about it and coming, we would love to have you. So everything is on Sober Life Rocks.
Well, thank you so much. So again, thank you for sharing your story of transformation, resiliency, and impact. I really appreciate what you do for all of those out there. And for our listeners, if Laura's story has inspired you, please visit soberliferocks.com and of course, pick up your copy of her book, Inclusive Event Planner. So once you go to the website, I'm sure you can find all kind of social media and where you can reach out. Correct?
Yep, that's right. And thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
No, thank you so much, Laura. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
If this episode spoke to you, if it sparked a thought, a feeling, or a shift, I invite you to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss an episode. Visit www.rosabelzohfeld.com. Here on Rosabel Unscripted, we dive deep into real stories, mindful moments, and conversations that matter. Every week, we explore themes like resilience, healing, transformation, and the courage to rewrite your own story. So if you're ready to grow, reflect, and walk this journey with an open heart, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going. There are new episodes every week.